We moved in on a Saturday. My wife handled the kitchen. I handled the boxes. My son handled nothing. He was 7, which meant he moved from room to room with his hands in his pockets, looking at things the way you look at a place you're not sure about yet. I found the drawing 3 hours in at the bottom of a box I hadn't packed. I didn't pack it because I didn't know it existed. It was on the back of a grocery receipt, the kind of drawing he made on whatever was available when he didn't have paper. Ballpoint pen. His particular handwriting in the corner, the way he always signed things, first name only, the letters uneven but deliberate. I recognized the layout immediately. The hallway, the turn at the bottom of the stairs, the window placement in the room we'd decided would be his, the long wall in the living room where we'd already agreed the couch would go. I stood in the doorway of that room for a moment. Then I went and found him. I said, "When did you draw this?" He looked at it for a long time. He said, "I didn't draw that." I said, "That's your handwriting in the corner." He looked at the corner. He said, "The man downstairs showed me what it looked like." I said, "What man?" He said, "The man in the basement." I said, "We don't have a basement." He looked at me the way children look at adults when they think the adult is confused about something obvious. He said, "Yes, we do." Then he went back to looking at the room. "We don't have a basement." I checked the listing. I checked the inspection report. I walked the perimeter of the house that evening after my son was in bed and found nothing. No hatch, no exterior door, no seam in the foundation that suggested anything beneath the ground floor. There is no basement. I told myself he'd seen the layout in one of the viewings. We'd brought him twice. Children remember things they don't know they've retained. I told myself that. The second box I opened was linens. The third was books, and a small framed photo from the hallway of our last house. I carried the photo to the hallway to find a place for it. I stopped at the top of the stairs. The ceiling above the landing had a water stain, a specific shape, wide at the top, tapering to a point, the color of old tea. I had not noticed it during either viewing. The inspection report hadn't flagged it. I took out the drawing. In the upper corner of the hallway, my son had drawn a shape, wide at the top, tapering to a point. I stood there for a long time. Then I went to the living room wall. Then I went to his bedroom window. Then I crouched beside the radiator in the upstairs hallway and looked at the gap between the radiator foot and the baseboard. There was a crack in the plaster, thin, diagonal, starting at the lower left corner of the radiator bracket and running 3 inches toward the floor. My son had drawn a line in exactly that position. I had assumed it was a mistake, a 7-year-old's pen slipping. I stayed crouched beside the radiator for a long time. I did not look behind it. I wasn't ready to look behind it. Not yet. I didn't tell my wife. I want to be honest about that. I told myself I was waiting until I understood it better, until I had something that made sense to say. What I actually did was fold the drawing and put it in my jacket pocket and carry it with me for 4 days. I took it out at night when she was asleep. I looked at the details I hadn't looked at yet. The drawing had 7 rooms. Our house has 7 rooms. The drawing had a mark in the lower right corner of what I recognized as the master bedroom. In the lower right corner, behind the door, there were 4 small holes in the plaster, even spacing, the kind left by a picture hook pulled from the wall and patched and repainted. Except whoever patched it hadn't done it well enough. I looked at the drawing again. My son had drawn 4 dots. I asked him the next morning, casually, the way you ask a child something you don't want to seem important. I asked him what the dots were for. He said, "That's where the frame was." I said, "What frame?" He said, "The man's frame." He said he used to keep something there. He said he doesn't anymore. I asked him what the man kept in the frame. My son thought about it. He said, "I don't know." He said, "I wouldn't want to see it." I said, "How does he know what I'd want?" My son shrugged. He said, "He knows a lot about us." I asked my son about the man one more time. I told myself it would be the last time. I sat with him after dinner, just the two of us, and I asked him to tell me what the man looked like. My son thought about it seriously, the way he thought about everything. Chin down, eyes somewhere in the middle distance. He said the man was old. He said he had gray hands. I said, "What do you mean, gray hands?" He said, "Like when your hands get cold, but more." I said, "Does he talk to you?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What does he talk about?" He said, "Us, mostly. He asks questions." I said, "What kind of questions?" He said, "He asked if you're going to fix the crack by the radiator. He said you keep looking at it, but you haven't fixed it." I didn't say anything. My son looked at me. He said, "He also asked about Grandpa." I said, "What about Grandpa?" My son said he asked if Grandpa knew about the house. I said, "Grandpa has never been to this house." My son nodded. He said, "That's what I told him." He said, "The man said that was too bad. He said Grandpa would have recognized it." I sat there after my son went to bed for a long time. With that sentence, "My father has been dead for 6 years. This house was built in 1941. I have no connection to it, no history here, no family, nothing that should make it recognizable to anyone who shares my name." I went upstairs. I crouched beside the radiator. I looked at the crack, and this time, I looked behind it. The gap between the radiator and the wall is 4 inches at the widest point. I used my phone light. There was a piece of paper folded twice, pressed flat against the back of the baseboard, the way you press something into a space when you want it to stay without being seen. I worked it free with 2 fingers. I unfolded it at the kitchen table. It was a drawing, the same ballpoint pen, the same uneven but deliberate handwriting in the corner. My son's name, first name only. The bedroom was his, the window, the placement. The particular shape of the closet door he'd already complained about because it didn't close right. All of it correct, all of it his room, as it exists right now. I turned the paper over. On the back was a date. The paper had yellowed, the way paper yellows when it sits undisturbed for a long time. The date was 11 years before my son was born. I was still sitting there when I heard his feet on the stairs. He came into the kitchen and looked at me. He looked at the drawing on the table. He didn't ask where I found it. He said, "The man wants to know if we're staying." I looked at my son. I looked at the drawing. I thought about my father. I thought about what it means for a house to recognize a name it has no reason to know. I didn't answer my son. I don't know yet what the right answer is. I only know that whatever is in this house has been waiting for us specifically, and I don't know how long, and I don't know what waiting cost it, and I don't know what it expects now that we're here. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Lore Machina. We'll see you in the dark.